Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have Ogres versus the Trident Realm. This battle was fought at 2250 points and the scenario was Occupy. Now, as with the other battles so far in 2019, I don't have any army lists just yet because I'm too lazy to not use Easy Army to generate those. And trust me, you don't want me doing it anyway. But let's go over what the battlefield is first. So starting in the bottom left and the top right corner, we have two height 6 forests, and this terrain was actually set up, I should mention, using the master style. You can see a bit of tape right there. So there's a point here, and under each of these pieces of terrain, right, there's a small piece of tape that tells us where the terrain should go. We have a pile, and we each take turns choosing a piece of terrain to place down on the table. Hills cannot be placed in deployment zones, but otherwise anything goes. So anyway, we have those two height 6 forests, followed by we have two height 1 barricades or obstacles. So these are both in the bottom left and right hand sides. Then we have two height flat pawns, one in the center top and one in the top left corner of the screen. And then finally we have these two height 2 hills sort of central in the screen. And that's it for the terrain. As for the scenario, we occupy is like this. So you place an objective in the center of the table, then starting with the player who won the roll for who goes first, or not for who goes first, for who gets to set up on what side, you place one objective that is within 6 inches of the center line, right? And within 6 inches, but more than 12 inches away from any other objective. And that's the idea. My opponent placed his secondary objective right there, while I placed mine over here. It's a small chest in the left. The center, and the two secondary objectives are each worth 1 victory point if you control them at the end of the game. Secondly, there are two primary objectives. These have to be deployed more than 9 inches from the center line, right? So my opponent's is down here in the bottom right hand corner, and then mine is in the top left hand corner in that little treasure chest. These are worth 2 points at the end of the game if you control them, but they're only worth 2 points to the army that placed them. So again, my opponent placed this one, it's worth 2 points to him, and then I placed this one and it's worth 2 points to me. But only me. So that's the idea. Moving on to armies, we see this Trident Realm army. My opponent has been painting this for the better part of a year, I think, and it's really been nice to see it progress. I really like seeing armies grow. It's cool. So first up, we have a horde of Worm Riders, or really just a horde of Worm Rider. He has the Staying Stone. Next to him is the Siren herself. To the left of her, we see the 1st Regiment of Heart Piercers, and then the start of a 2nd Regiment of Heart Piercers. Behind them, the Trident King himself. He's there ready to fight. Over here, we see, these are the same Heart Piercers I just pointed out. So this horde of Naiad and Snares are a stand-in for my opponent so far, which was a little confusing right at the beginning of the game, and not because I'm confused by stand-ins. Obviously, if you watch this channel, you understand we use a lot of them, but because I thought for a second he was going to use the new version of the old Naiad formation, which is a horde of Ensnares and two regiments of Heart Piercers and 1 Centurion. And what you get for that is the Heart Piercers gain steady aim, which is amazing. You don't take the move and shoot penalties, and then everyone gains fury. So really cool formation, but unfortunately this horde of Ensnares is a stand-in for his Placoderms for the time being, which is understandable. Placoderms are still pretty good even with their nerf in 2019. Behind them, this is not merely a Centurion, this is Nikushi herself. And over here we have two of the, what are these? The Leviathan's Banes. So this is an artillery piece, it hits on a 5+, has 2 shots, and then each one does D3 plus 1 hits at Pierce 4. So it's okay, a little overpriced in my opinion. Finally, we have the 2nd horde of Worm Riders. These have the Blade of Slashing, and in front of them are 2 Coral Giants. I love Coral Giants, so very happy to see my opponent fielding them. And I think, in fact, these models will end up looking pretty cool once they're done up. Probably like statue work, although I did mention that if he doesn't want to do any sculpting, he could always glue lichen down onto these guys, because lichen ends up looking like coral, especially if you dye it first. So that was my suggestion, but it might be a little too brittle for him. So over here we start with the Ogre army. This is on the Ogre left flank, so it's a little disconcerting because it's taken from the opposite side, right? So starting off, we have my first Mammoth that has a ballista on top. Then we have my first regiment of Red Goblins. So these guys are part of the Hunters formation, meaning that they have Nimble, which makes them way better. And speaking of Hunters, we have 2 hordes of Hunters right here, part of that formation again. I like using these, I have a love-hate history with these Yeti models because I'm not a big fan of them, but everyone else seems to like them, so you know, I might just keep using them, and they do make good hunter models. And I have 2 more. I'd only have to buy a further 2, which shouldn't be that hard to get. And I have all my hunters, and I don't really like using my obvious ogre warriors as hunters all the time. So anyway, we have 2 hordes of hunters. These ones have the Brew of Strength, the other ones have nothing. Behind them, you can see him a little bit, that is Nomar Garak. I haven't figured out his model yet either. In the back here, we have my first Warlock. This one has Drain Life and the Banner of the Griffin. Next to him is my second Mammoth, again with the Ballista. Then we have 2 hordes Boomers over here. Pretty ubiquitous in my opinion. Behind them is my second Warlock, again with Drain Life, and this one has the Inspiring Talisman. We finish off with the last regiment of Red Goblins and Cuzlo and Madfall, but oof, Cuzlo's so good. I bought him the Spell Siphon. I really want to see it go off, and this might be the perfect opportunity as my opponent does have the Siren, and Siren's Call is a unique spell and so good. It could be amazing to not only just remove from his repertoire, but also casting it onto the Trident Realms from Ogres could be pretty cool. So let's get down to it. And turn 1. So turn 1 goes to the Ogres, and you might be thinking to yourself, I've seen this picture before. Well, that's because I used it to explain the terrain layout, as I forgot to take a picture before we started the game, so obviously the Ogres go first. They do what Ogres do, and they run forward. The Hunters run as far as they can forward, but my Boomers stay just off of this hill, so they can probably get within 12 of a unit, but they're not on the hill itself to get blasted by these Heart Piercers. That's the idea, at least. All my Warlocks just sort of stay back, or both my Warlocks just sort of stay back. Nomar runs, just to make sure that I've got the Inspire on these Hunters. Both of my Red Goblins just advance forward, using their Nimble to give them 5+ shots. And my Mammoths also just advance forward to make sure that they can use those Ballistas. Cuzlo is somewhere over here. I'm not sure where. He's a weird fellow. Or a mad fellow, I guess. Mad follow. Anyway, turn 1 for the Trident Realms. It's a bit more aggressive as they can actually move into me. So we see with my shooting, I end up doing a couple wounds, actually 5 to these Heart Piercers through a mix of bows and I believe this Mammoth. Both my Mammoths hit this turn. So this Mammoth and these Goblins end up doing 5 wounds to these Heart Piercers, which is pretty good, and I need an 8 to waver them. I don't get it, so no luck there. But I do end up also landing a shot onto this Leviathan's Bane, which is pretty good, as I end up landing 2 wounds onto it. It is an 8-10, I believe, but I don't get lucky, so it's still ready to go. My opponent advances forward, and starting on the right side, he just puts these worms into the forest, which is always good. Pathfinder abound in this army. The Trident King moves very aggressively forward, and he makes an interesting move with the Siren. So the Siren is obviously going to Siren's Call one of my units of Boomers, specifically these ones, because he can't see the other one. But when he does that, he'll probably drag me into charge range of his Trident King. And given that, I mean, I'll be charging through the woods, right? Because I can't stop that. But still, I'm not sure that's a great idea. But, you know, turning off Boomer's ability to boom, I guess, is good enough. We've got the 2 regiments of Heart Piercers ready to shoot into my Hunters. into either of the hunters, really. And then we've got the Leviathan's Banes that can choose their shots. So the Leviathan's Bane, number 1, and I believe both of them go into these hunters and do an amazing 10 wounds to me, that's insane. I think he gets help from one of the Heart Piercers because he only hits with 3 out of the 4 shots. So he can only do 9 wounds, or no, he could do more than that. Maybe they did this on their own. But anyway, I take 10 wounds, which is pretty nuts. I wasn't, really thinking I was going to lose a hunter against this amount of shooting turn 1, or hunter horde, but here we are. And over here, yeah, I get dragged forward, but I do have a flank onto this Trident King if I want next turn. Lastly, yeah, and then the shooting continues, and he does 12 wounds to these hunters, so I was already like, ooh, 10 wounds, that's pretty brutal. And he does 12 to these ones, and I'm like, well, fuck. Trident King really adding to that with his pretty sweet breath attack. But, yep, and as I say before, it doesn't really matter until you roll nerve checks, though. So he fails both these nerve checks due to, at least this one, due to being within 6 inches of the Banner of the Griffin. So, oof, rally 1, good rule. And we move forward to turn 2. So turn 2 for the Ogres is pretty simple. I think my opponent has me out deployed, and I don't mean that he has more deployments than I do. I mean that he's done a better job. So I decide that I kind of need big blows right now. So I go in with these 3 units, both my hunters and one of the mammoths into his placoderms, mostly because even with double, because I could Bane Chant with Nomar onto the other horde of hunters and get 36 attacks on 3s and 4s versus the placoderms, but I still don't trust that, so I also send in a mammoth to get 12 more attacks with 4s and 4s, just to push it over the edge. So that's the idea there. I send the boomers, who are disordered, into the flank of the Trident King, and I probably would have done that anyway, even if I could shoot. I like having that flank. Cuzlo over here, so Cuzlo's plan, he is just out of charge arc of these Worm Riders, and what he wants to do is spell siphon the the Siren who's right there and drag these guys away, or maybe not even cast it at all. At the end of the day, he ends up failing that. So spell siphon, great rule. These goblins got an arch. Same thing with the other ones, and my mammoth here is presented with quite a cool move by my opponent. So if you look at the way his coral giants are placed, if I charge, I can't reach this coral giant in the back, but I can reach the front one, right? But if I charge it, I'll end up right about here, right? With my 12 attacks, I'm very unlikely to kill it, and I end up pushing an inch away. And when I do that, this guy can see my flank. And when he charges, he'll get a flank charge and a front charge, and that'll be bye-bye to that mammoth, especially as I'd have to run one of these warlocks over to inspire it if I wanted it to get a reroll. So instead, I decide to not charge and just move a little bit and get some more shooting through. But still a good move by my opponent, especially with this coral giant, which if you look at it, if you look at its crosses, right, it can see most of what's going on the table. It doesn't quite look like it, but when these hunters, anyway, so he has some pretty good shots here. You can go into my warlocks, into my dumb goblins, or into this mammoth if it charges. So pretty good move, a lot of interdiction in the combats. So first we go into the Trident King, and I'm still hitting on 5s because I traveled through the woods, but I end up doing pretty well with my hits and wounds. I put him on, I think, a 9 to kill, and I nail it. So that is a very lucky shot by me. But it is equaled out because I go into the placoderms, all these wounds, I end up doing 19 wounds to him, and bam, double ones. So, yep, first double one of the game, and this one was relevant as I had brutal, so I had them on double ones anyway, and it just never feels good. You can see back here, I actually managed some pretty hefty shooting with my goblins, and I think a lightning bolt onto these heart piercers, putting them on 9 wounds, but I only get the waiver. So I killed them on the first go, and then on the reroll I roll a 4, so only a waiver. And we move on to Trident Realm's turn 2. So yeah, at the end, So Trident Realm's turn 2, the Worm Riders obviously charge into the flank of these hunters because they can. My opponent wisely decides to not send the Coral Giant in as well because he's better suited threatening rears and sides and just helping out there. His Placoderms decide to go for a front charge onto my hunters, and this is something, like, again, I've done this tirade a lot, but double ones, it's only a bad rule. Like, I really like the adventure and the idea that, that a unit could survive, right? That's fine by me. And I don't really give a fuck about what would happen. That isn't relevant to me. I'm all about mechanics. So what's fun and what's good in a game is that, yeah, sometimes you survive impossible odds. But the problem is that these Placoderms can charge me immediately. The only thing I want out of double ones in a change is that you cannot charge when you're already, when a unit's at double ones, right? And you roll it, right? So if you added 2 to the score and it equaled or was greater than the nerve value of the unit, they are wavered. And I mean, like, whatever you want to call it for super waver, because I also want it to work on Fearless. Just a unit, if you get double ones, you act as if you are wavered, right? So no moving forward, no shooting, no spellcasting, no charging. But instead, it's super bad because it's not the same thing as a boxcar. As a boxcar, if I boxcard my opponent, he gets a full turn to react, but on the double ones, the next person that gets to act is the person who benefited from it, right? So I double one him, then he acts immediately, and part of that act is that he can charge me with the unit that I double one. So I just don't think it's a good mechanic. It needs a slight adjustment. So yeah, anyway, so he goes into my hunters who are already on 12 wounds and decides to throw Nakushi in for good measure. That's an okay move, right? Like, if you're playing cautiously, which I think is prudent as he's currently on the upper hand, he has the upper hand, yeah, I might as well keep it as Nakushi's not really in danger by being there, as he's right in the middle of a pond right now. So this is all difficult terrain. On the right hand side, you can see that one of his regiments of Heart Piercers and the horde of Worm Riders have gone into my Boomer horde that killed the Trident King after their reform. Again, a good move. They should be able to kill them off pretty easily, and even if they don't, like, he can set them up to have a lot of wounds, and they're very unlikely to threaten either of those units. I'm not sure exactly where she is. Oh, there she is. So you can see her Jazz back here. That's that little witch. She is going to cast a Siren's Call onto my other boomers because they're currently height 4 for being on the hill. They shot at the Heart Piercers over here. That's how they ended up with 9 last round. So yeah, but gonna drag my boomers around, never letting them shoot again, sadly for me. And lastly, we have over here you can see the corner. Beep. His Coral Giant decides to just take the charge into my Mammoth. So in this combat, he does a couple wounds to me, but I think it's 3, which is not enough to get a roll at all because I'm a dash 18. With this flank charge, yeah, he doesn't get the double 1. He does more than the 3 or more than the 5 wounds he needs to put me in double 1s, kills them off, and does more than the 3 wounds he needs to not need double 1s here. Kills both my Hunter hordes, turn 2. And I do get a bit of luck as he does 11 wounds to these boomers, so rolling pretty well there, I think, or maybe not, who knows. But he only gets a waiver, so lucky for me at least. And at the end of the turn, it looks like this. The Ogres are definitely on their back foot. I've got some wavered boomers here. Both my combat blocks are dead, and I pretty much have goblins and a bunch of ogre characters and 2 mammoths to finish this game, although 1 mammoth is sort of preoccupied with this Coral Giant. He can't get around. So, we'll see. Turn 3. Turn 3 Ogres, I need something to happen here. And if we roll back a picture, you can see these boomers here. They can actually just barely see the Placoderms, and they are in the Placoderms front. So when they can, I believe, wheel through my other boomers as long as they don't end the wheel in them for the charge. So I wheel through them, I reposition them like, oh, that's a terrible box, like so, right? Facing this way. They hit the corner and then they end up right here. So that's the idea there. I take that charge because I need these Placoderms gone yesterday. And my Mammoth then gets trapped because without Nimble, I wanted him to reform and sort of face like this, you know. That's a great arrow, towards the Worm Riders, but he can't quite make it, so instead he decides to help out with the Placoderms, making sure they go. I send Nomar into the front of these worms, and he's not a great combatant, but he does have 5 attacks, and he is brutal, so if I get lucky, I'll get a waiver. If not, I'm at least a speed bump, so that's the idea. These boomers back up, away. I position my Goblin Archers ready to make these Naiads feel the sting of the Monarch. And Cuzlo, deciding that Spell Siphon is dumb, goes into the flank of these Worm Riders, hoping for a Cuzlo kill. And lastly, I send my Mammoth into the Coral Giant. Yeah, you can see there he took 3 wounds. Actually, not lastly, I send the other goblins, these are melee archers, I guess, into the side of this Coral Giant, hoping that my opponent will just make a mistake and want to fight them. Although that's not really a thing that happens in these games, because when we do test games, we pretty much just talk through optimum paths the whole time, so he would have never done this, as I was just setting him up for a mistake. And in this combat, I do, I believe, 3 wounds excuse me, to the Coral Giant, but I don't get the boxcar I need to get the waivers, so it goes down to 2. Over here, I do maybe 1 wound. I think I did 1 wound, which is not enough. I don't get the boxcar, and it heals due to Iron Resolve. Over here, this is crazy. So they're sitting on 2 wounds already, and friggin' Nomar comes in, hits with 5 attacks, wounds with 4 or 5 of them, and gets the waiver. So yeah, Nomar deciding to step up after his hunter friends are all dead. Here, thankfully, I don't double one this again, and I kill off the Placoderms. And Cuzlo, yeah, Cuzlo does work here. He does quite a few wounds, hitting and wounding, I believe, with 8 of his 10 on 3s and 2s, but and nailing that waiver. So yeah, the worms are not going to be bothering us, or I guess the Worm Rider is not going to be bothering us anytime soon. But that's about it. On my reforms, I decide to take my Mammoth and face him this way, because if you look at it, this Giant can charge the Mammoth, maybe. We didn't end up testing it, but if he charges it, he charges in the front of the Mammoth, while Nakushi has a flank charge, right? But Nakushi has 6 attacks, so 12 attacks on the flank, and I'm at dash 18. She hits me on 3s and wounds me on 3s, and I don't think she'll do it. So I'm willing to take that flank charge just to make sure I have something facing this way that's a bit more combat able. Speaking of that, I decided to take my boomers and run past Nakushi, and at the time I thought this was a pretty good move, just run past, but I keep forgetting about this Siren over here. Because she's just going to turn off my ability to shoot, and then what am I going to do with my horde of boomers? Well, the answer is nothing. So moving forward to the turn 3 for Trident Realms. So turn 3 Trident Realms, yeah, these Worm Riders are wavered. Actually, both the Worm Rider hordes are wavered this turn, so that's good for me. We can see that his Coral Giant in the bottom left goes back into, well, we can't really see it, but imagine it goes into my Mammoth. The other Coral Giant, yep, sees a juicy flank on Nomar and goes into that, so that's bad news. Nakushi joins in the flank charging and goes into the other Mammoth. And the Siren drags me 1 inch with her 99.6% chance of nailing at least 1 hit. Drags me 1 inch over here. Yeah, these boomers are not going to shoot this game, are they? And lastly, the Heart Piercers here. Originally my opponent charged, and again, like I said, we walk through proper moves in games just to make sure we know what what optimized play would look like, or as optimized as we can get it. So yeah, I talked to him and I'm like, well, why would you ever charge me, right? You're gonna hit me on 5s and wound me on 4s because you have no crushing. Why don't you just shoot at me, and then if you miss, which is what he was worried about, the Siren can always back you up with a drain life, right? I'm already at 11 wounds. It's not like, I mean, he needs to do 1 wound to put me on double ones at least for the waiver. So I talk him out of it, and that's what it ends up being. And in combat, my opponent does like 5 or 6 wounds, something like that, to the Mammoth, getting him into danger territory. No, I'm sorry. I think he does 4 wounds to me. 5 or 6 would be pretty crazy. It does 4 wounds to me, which does put me in danger territory, as he needs an 11 to kill me, or maybe a 10. I can't remember if these guys have brutal. I think they do. So Buddy doesn't roll it, and we move forward. Oh, it looks like I did 2 wounds and 1 stuck. So not 3 and 2. It was 2 and 1. Over here, Nikushi gets in here and actually does surprisingly well. I think she does 8 wounds to me, which is slightly above, but oh, yes, I think it is. Yeah, but thankfully for me, she doesn't get the high roll she needs to kill me, and I'm ready to rock. And right here, yep, the Coral Giant goes into the flank of Nomar. He rolls up his random attacks, gets 6, so that's 22 attacks on my flank, and yeah, it does 5 wounds. So 5 wounds to Nomar. That's average, I think. Pretty nasty. But yeah, I have actually not been mentioning these Leviathan Banes, who have been the bane of my existence, so I should definitely mention them now. So they have hit, at this point in the game, turn 3, with 75% of their shots, which is crazy good, because they only hit on a 5+ with 2 shots each, right? And it's not so much that like it's above averages, it's just so good. When War Machines roll well in the first 3 turns of the game, it's amazing, right? Like they have depreciating returns after that, because as the game goes on, you don't really need those early shots anymore, and their extreme, ability to shoot long range doesn't matter as much, right? Like at this point on turn 3, I'm already within, 18 to 24 inches with most of my army. So, yeah, hitting with all these shots is really, really solid. And again, he hits with some of them onto this Warlock, puts me on 6 wounds, and gets the waiver. So that is my Banner the Griffin one. Unfortunate for me, but pretty fortunate with Nomar, so I'll take what I can get. And we move on to turn 4. So turn 4 for the Ogres. I again send my Mammoth back into this Coral Giant in the bottom left, the fight that won't end, and Nomar sees the Giant's challenge and goes like, I think I'm going to go into the Worms. So he goes into the Worms. These combat archers go into the flank, just hoping to get a wound or 2 through to help out. My Mammoth countercharges into Nikushi. I'm actually facing this way, but these Ranox Riders don't play well with others, so I'm over there. I spin my boomers around because they can't shoot, as the Siren's on the table, and I decide to take Cuzlo. I don't want to charge into the front of Worm Riders with Cuzlo, so instead, and actually you can see they have no wounds on them now, because regen is a real bitch. But yeah, so I take Cuzlo around the back of the forest. He can see the Siren to get Siren's Call again, and the idea is I want to Siren's Call this unit right here, making it so he can't hit my boomers next turn, and I will drag these guys away and turn off their shooting. So, haha, Cuzlo the Mighty. My Goblin Archers, it doesn't quite look like it, but they are actually out of charge range from these Worm Riders, and they're just gonna sling some Goblin Bows, do what they do. And yeah, in shooting, I do hit with a few of the Goblin Bows and do damage or 2. Cuzlo, again, misses with Spell Siphon, so well worth 15 points, guys. And we move on to, I actually did get, right here, this Warlock is set up to get a Drain Life onto Nikushi, just to help out my Giant a little bit, and yeah, I do, I think, 0 wounds. I think I only hit once and failed to wound with it, so it's unfortunate, but it happens. Over here, we can see my Mammoth goes into the Coral Giant again. I do a couple wounds here, I believe 4 or 5 wounds, but it's not enough to get a waiver, so, Iron Resolve fires, and it goes back down, I believe, to 4. Into Nikushi, I do pretty well. I think I do 5-ish wounds, which is okay. Yeah, it's pretty good. And but I don't get the waiver, unfortunately. On the first roll, I do Killer, and then we do the reroll and turns into nothing. Over here, yeah, so Nomar again shows how good he is. Hits with all 5 of his attacks, wounds with all 5 of his attacks because he's a monster, and the goblins chip in a further wound, putting these Worm Riders on a hot 10, and they're only a, what is it? They're 14-16, I want to say, 14-16 nerve, or 15-17, but I do have Brutal, so looking for that. I think they're 14-16, so looking for that not double ones to get the waiver, and bam, got the double ones. So double ones number 2 of the game. Keep that count going, guys. Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and again, the Worm Riders being able to charge is my problem with this, not anything else. And here is the end of the turn. Things are definitely getting saucy. The Ogres are on their back foot, but we're not out yet. This is a point control game, and Ogres are pretty good at those. So yeah, we keep fighting. And here is turn 4 for the Trident Realms. The Worm Raiders are now appearing off screen. That is because they've dashed off to go for that 2-point objective somewhere down here in the south. He takes the Siren and places her directly in front of my boomers, and this is a pretty good move. She will hit them with Siren Call, turn off my ability to shoot, and if I charge, he has ensnare, or she has ensnare. So, seems good. Nakushi goes back into my Mammoth, hoping to, you know, rack those wounds up, currently at 7, but I do have the Banner of the Griffin, so I'm at dash 19, so he needs to do 1 wound to me to put me on an 11. And the Coral Giant says, no, this time Nomar, you're going down. I'm not going to fail. Goes back into the flank, and the Worm Raiders, because double ones are cool, can charge my Goblins. And of course, the Coral Giant down here fights me. Some more. And right here, yeah, you can see his stupid Leviathan's Bane. This time only hits with 2 of his shots, but in those 2 shots does 6 wounds to me and puts me on double ones and does it. So double ones number 3 of the game. We're doing it, guys. So yeah, gets another double one, or he gets a double one now. The score is 2-1. And over here, he does okay with his hits and wounds. Maybe he does. No, I think he actually does poorly this turn, and puts me into, I'm still in danger territory, but doesn't get the kill, but it's looking bad for me as, you know, his nerve is the same, except for I'm fearless, right? But that Iron Resolve is really kicking in, along with his +1 crushing over my crush 2, so, not looking good for the Mammoth. The Goblins here fighting Worm Raiders. So with his Crush 1, he's hitting me on 3s, wounding me on 2s with 18 attacks. He does 10 wounds to me, and bam! Double ones, number 2 of the turn, 4 of the game. So pretty crazy. We've got 2 double ones in 1 turn. So we're back in the game, guys. Finally over here, we get the Coral Giant fighting my fighting Nomar Garak, and this is the order. I think he actually did this one first, but he goes into Nomar, does a ton of wounds, and bam, another double one. So my opponent's now up to 3. That's 5 double ones for 1 game, and 3 in 1 turn. So yikes, guys, yikes. Lastly, we've got this combat, which it's not the best. So Nakushi only has 6 attacks. She hits on a 3+, so, you know, on average she's going to get 4 hits, and then she wounds me with her Crush 1, I think, on a 4, so she gets, you know, 1 to 2 wounds. I'm already on 7. I'm at dash 19 right now, so she'll need a, you know, she gets out 1 wound through, which she does. She gets 1. She'll need an 11. And my opponent rolls boxcars into boxcars and just wipes out this Mammoth. So that is 3 double ones, 2 boxcars, 1 turn. Pretty nuts. These dice are spiky. So this is the end of Trident Realms turn 4. And we move forward to Ogre turn 5. So Ogre turn 5. Not a lot of Ogres on the table. Cuzlo decides to roll around, again going for a Spell Siphon onto the lady, the Siren, and this is a thing, I actually didn't look it up at the time, I just sort of assumed. I'm not sure I can cast Spell Siphon into combat, because my my boomers definitely do charge here, but I'm going to cast it anyway. I am looking at the rear of these Heart Piercers, so if they continue just staring off into space, I will rear charge them. The Worm Raiders are sitting on 3 or 4 wounds over there, I think it's 3, getting ready to rush this objective. Seems good. The Goblin Archers turn to face a little bit like this. They can actually see the Worm Raiders unobstructed, so that's going to be their plan. I move one of my Warlocks over here, so I can drain life on Nakushi, who is on 3 wounds because regen's cool. And then I decide, like, this was my idea, was I have 1 Warlock there, 1 Warlock here, and then I immediately forget that plan, take this Warlock and run him over here. So yeah, small mistake there because of a misfire in my brain. But I do land a Drain Life onto the Worm Raiders. I get 2 wounds and heal 2 off of the Goblins, putting them on 8. Speaking of the Goblins, they go into the front of the Worm Raiders because why not? And the side is Nomar. So yeah, Nomar getting in there. He's got 14 wounds on him, nothing left to lose. And finally, we have the Mammoth fight. So the Mammoth is on 8 wounds now. The Coral Giant's on 4. Not looking great. I think I do a fair number of wounds, and I'm looking for a 10. So that I do 4 wounds to it, looking for a 10 to kill. And I get it. So yeah, I won this back fight. So that's definitely a lucky streak for me, especially going into this with my opponent rolling 3 double ones. In this fight, you can see that the Worm Riders have healed 3 due to their regen, but Nomar hits with 5 of his attacks, sinks all 5 wounds. The Goblins get 1 through as well, and poof, those Worm Riders are gone. Sorry. And over here, yeah, I get the boomers in here. On average, they should be, what is that? 6 hits, and then they wound her on 2, so 5-ish wounds. I end up doing 4, so a little below average, and then I only get the waver, so that might as well just be nothing, as she has 1 melee attack, probably on a 5+ or 6+ melee. So without her gone, it's kind of a big bowl of nothing. I forgot to mention, Cuzlo did land Spell Siphon, and I decided to erroneously take Drain Life and go for those Heart Piercers instead of taking Siren's Call. And in retrospect, I definitely should have taken Siren's Call. It was stupid to take the other one. I could have turned off shooting and made it so this unit, the Siren, if she survived my boomers, wouldn't be able to cast next turn, period, regardless of what I did. So yeah, small mistake by me. And here's what it looks like at the end of Ogre's turn 5. Or, sorry, Ogre's turn 5, sorry. So Ogre turn 5, you can see that Nomar has overrun. He's actually facing this way. He's just got that dumb mace. So yeah, he is out of the charge arc of the Giants, so that's lucky there. The only thing left to shoot are these very dead-eye Leviathan's Bane. You can see that my Mammoth has advanced forward a little bit to get back into the fight. And I've got this, the left side is on lockdown by the Ogres, which is surprising. And then the center is also pretty good for the Ogres, right? There's only Nakushi and the Wavered Siren. Unfortunately, because of my Drain Life kerfuffle, Nakushi's still up, so ugh. The right side is not looking great, but my Goblins did manage to land 2 wounds onto the Worm Riders and waver them, even with the Staying Stone. So yeah, solid stuff. Things are definitely looking up for the Ogres. And we move on to turn 5 for the Trident Realms. I showed this off because I forgot to take a picture beforehand. He charges into the, if we roll a picture back, so this giant can see the flank of these boomers. All he needs to do is get Nakushi out of the way. So Nakushi rolls down here to the center point, and the giant charges the flank, although actually doesn't have to move Nakushi because he can go like this, right? But yeah, charges into the flank of my boomers, and bam, another double 1. So at least this one, my opponent didn't actually need double, like it wasn't anything but still, that is the 4th double 1 for my opponent, 6 in this game. Crazy numbers here, crazy math. And again, he rolled a 6 for his number of attacks, so that's 22 attacks, nails 9 wounds. All the Giants are either 6s or 1s, and everything's either boxcars or double 1s for the break check. So very exciting, I guess. And the end of Trident Realm's turn 5 is pretty uneventful because he can't cast with the Siren, so she rolls back. Nakushi, as I said before, just moves to the center to cast Heal onto the Siren, and this giant fails. But the Leviathan's Bane continue to be my Bane and fire their shots into Nomar, who is no more, easily killing him. And the Worm Riders friggin' regen 4 wounds out of their 5, so that's unfortunate for me. And we move on to turn 6. So turn 6 for the Ogres. I'm definitely on the right foot here, and I decide to move everything in to grab objectives. I move these Goblins over here to grab 1 objective. I move this Mammoth within 3 of that objective by crab walking. I decide to take both my Warlocks and put them within 3 of the center objective to take it from Nakushi. Also, we're going for that Drain Life plan this turn. I decided to charge countercharge with the Boomers into the Giant, and the idea here was, originally I had Cuzlo over here, and Cuzlo was going to charge the Siren to turn off Siren's Call and just get Ravenous Lizard right here in the middle, right? Because if it's right here, I have Nikushi, the Siren, and the Giant all at -1 nerve. I'm also at -1 nerve, but that shouldn't matter if all these are dead, right? So that's the idea. I could then flank charge him with these goblins, goblin archers. They only have 10 attacks because they hit on 6s, so they'd be on 7s, but still, sinking 1 wound turns off his shooting, and I'm not afraid of getting charged. But at the last second, I decided that Cuzlo would be better off sacrificing himself, stopping these worms from being able to make it to this objective. So that is exactly what he does, and because I did that, none of this works anymore. So yeah, really just make sure to think about your stuff before you do it. These boomers go into the Giant. They probably should have gone into the Siren, but I didn't. My Goblin Archers are just gonna... They're set up to be able to shoot at Nikushi, or shoot at the Siren, or shoot at these War Machines, whatever they need to do. The Mammoth, unfortunately, because he crab walked, could not turn, so he has to shoot at the artillery if he wants to shoot, and that's about it. So with my shooting, I do pretty poorly with the drain lives, as it is drain 13, as I am within 6 inches of this horde of ogres. Drain 16 on Nikushi, not enough to even waver her. I also fire the Goblin Archers into her, which does nothing. These Goblin Archers decide to shoot into the Heart Piercers and do nothing, but they tried. And the Mammoth does nothing on the Leviathan's Bane, because 5 blesses are hard for ogres. And we move forward to turn 6 for Trident Realms. Things are... Oh, nope. We have this combat where I do nothing. So, turn 6 for Trident Realms, or Trident Realm. And it's looking pretty good for him. My opponent decides to take the Coral Giant, put him back into the Boomers. Nikushi rushes down here to grab the objective because the Worm Riders can't. And actually, if we roll a picture forward, the Worm Riders themselves charge into Cuzlo, and I think that this was a mistake, in my opinion, because so he has the Siren right over here. She is going to drag my goblins off of the objective because, again, it's a 99.6% chance of dragging them 1 inch away, which is enough for how I place them. Again, a misplay by me, although I'm not sure. Definitely a misplay. So. Yeah, so he can drag me off that objective, and if he does that, I think he should have taken these Worm Riders and charged into my goblins, because he could have just taken the, what are these, Heart Piercers again, and moved them a little bit this way, keeping them still within 3 of this, and then the Worm Riders charge into my goblins, who are already sitting on, looks like they're sitting on 8 wounds. So, sitting on 8 wounds, he does not need to do a lot to kill them off, and even if he doesn't, he still has 5 unit strength to my 2 within 3 of this. So, yeah, I just don't see the point in charging Cuzlo unless you know there's a turn 7, and we don't, right? So if he had done that, he would have 1-3 points to my 1-2 points, right? Because he drags me off this objective and instantly wins. But instead, he goes for this play. So instead, this is contested. No one has it. He has 2 points there. I have 1 point, 2 point, and I'm going to get dragged off of this. But currently, I have 4. And at the end, after all said and done, yeah, these fucking Leviathan's Banes shoot into my Mammoth, do 4, looks like they did 4 wounds, and then roll the 7 to kill it. So the Mammoth is gone, the Goblins are dragged off the objective, and I'm left with 1 point to his 2. Oh, and the Goblins got killed by these Heart Piercers. So yeah, I'm left with 1 point to my opponent's 3 points. We don't roll the close combat because it doesn't matter, we're not doing attrition score, and we roll to see if there's a turn 7, which means that we would have had to actually do the combat. There is no turn 7, so we stop. And the Trident Realms beat the Ogres 3-1 in a pretty decisive victory. So, as I might have alluded to at the beginning of the video, I did make a small snafu in list construction here. Again, I write a lot of these lists like on, you know, scratch paper, like basically napkin math, and I constantly tinker with them, right? So I'm taking units out, putting units in, and the first time I did this, I was dog sitting, and so around 3 in the morning of the barking, I decided to just write an ogre army using the 19 rules, and I played against this Trident Realm player, a similar army, and I completely tabled him. And at the end of it, he was like, wow, what a drubbing. I can't wait to see the battle report. And when I went to go put up the battle report, I found out I was playing around 240 points over. So I was like, oh no. And since I decided that's not really a battle report going like, yeah, check out me table this guy while I'm playing 240 points up. So I just decided to scrub it, do a different one. And then in this battle, I had, I learned from my lesson and went, okay, I really need to make sure, check my math. And then I forgot my notebook with all my army lists in it. And I went, well, I can remember what's in this list now. And I showed up to this game and I'm playing 240 points down. So I actually forgot a horde of ogre chariots. And then I think I forgot a horde of chariots and maybe magic item, something like that. But yeah, I'm playing 240 points down, so it's kind of funny. I mean, it's not funny, haha, but I enjoyed it. So hopefully next time I will get my points, all my ducks in a row, and I will play ogres against an army and have the correct number of points so you can see what happens. Obviously, this loss has nothing to do with dice or the way I played. It's just that I played 240 points down, guys. And I hope you guys all enjoyed the report, and I'll see you next time. Bye.